Every parent has experienced that moment when they see their child is about to make a mistake and lets it happen. The consequences are usually pretty low, maybe a skinned knee or a bad taste, but the experience is important. After all, experience is the best teacher. Anais Biera Miracle of the Children's Shelter is here to talk about how children learn and teach. Welcome to BexarCast. I'm Randy Langford, and this is BexarCast, a weekly interview with business, political, educational, and nonprofit leaders. We're examining the relationships between all four and how each one benefits from the success of the other three. Anais Biera Miracle is the Chief Public Relations Officer for the Children's Shelter, where she oversees the agency's public relations, legislative affairs, and advocacy initiatives. Anais' public relations career spans nearly 15 years. She's a graduate of the University of the Incarnate Word with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a minor in Speech Communications. Anais, hi. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Randy. Wonderful to be with you.
Well, thanks so much for making some time for me. I just want to give you a couple of minutes to bring me up to speed on the Children's Shelter. There's so much to it that it's hard to put it in 30 seconds, but I'm gonna give you that opportunity. Is there a one-sentence recap?
Oh gosh. Well, our mission is to restore innocence and strengthen families. I mean, we've been doing that since 1901. That's your one-hit wonder right there.
Right. You start with one sentence, and that leads into 1 hour.
Sure.
So it's not just children. It's called the Children's Center, but it doesn't just serve children. They're families.
Correct. So the Children's Shelter, our mission is to restore innocence and strengthen families, and we do so through an array of services, and those services are geared towards families. Obviously, people know us by our emergency shelter. That was something the Jefferson High School kiddos really, were on our campus, and they were able to see that. So we have an emergency shelter. We do treatment foster care. We have a prevention services that work with fathers, work with moms, work with caregivers, with our compadre and compadre program, our iParent SA program, our nursing partnership program. In addition to that, we also do mental health clinic services. We know that we had Rosemary Coates, who was also part of the video that the Jefferson kiddos talked about. And she was very much rooted in, sometimes you may see a student who's among you who may be in foster care, or maybe they're living with a relative, or maybe who's experiencing something distressful in their home life. And so, we also have mental health care services for children and families. And then we also embarked in something this past year in 2019 that really talked about community-based care, really doing what's needed for the children and families who have been touched by foster care. And we're doing that through our division called Family Tapestry. And so when you look at all of the work that we do, minus the community-based care work at Family Tapestry, we serve nearly a little more, around 4,500 children and families. And it speaks to the volume, because San Antonio is such a large city. We're a little bit under 2 million. Our child population is a little under 600,000. And so you're talking about very, very large urban population that has these very complex needs.
Is San Antonio, and there's no general way to ask this question, are we better or worse than most?
So according to the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, they released their data book last week for 2019. We are ranked fourth county out of the 254 Texas counties. So with the highest number of confirmed cases of child abuse and neglect.
Wow. So that's not good.
So in 2019, Bexar County had about 5,373 confirmed victims of child abuse and neglect. But in 2018, that was a little bit higher. So we did decrease. The number of percentage of removals is decreasing, which is good.
So the trend is right.
The trend is right, but what we're seeing is that there's more children who are confirmed victims of child abuse and neglect, and the allegation is neglectful supervision, and so that's 79.2% from last year, and so that was an increase from the previous year, which was about 72%. Okay. And so when you're talking about that, you're talking about how substance use can really be related to the removals of children. And so that's a really big issue that I think, we should talk about. And I think that there's programs out there in our communities that are working with families to help understand, the long history of trauma that does go on. And so, we want to be able to make sure that through our service delivery, that families can adequately get the services they need, because every single child and every single family member is very different. And
Sure.
They're going to, and with San Antonio being as large as it is, the Jefferson High School kiddos are right down the street, they're like in our home community. And, every single area of Bexar County is very different.
Sure.
And how we work with families can be very different as well.
Right. Yeah, it's not only every case is different, but there are different aspects to every case. Everybody involved in every case is different.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And I obviously have a real soft spot for kids. That's how I got started doing this in the first place. We put this opportunity, this Bear Fest opportunity, in front of high school students, and they respond just in remarkable ways. You're a classic example of that. The children's shelter is not a easy topic for high school kids to digest and tell a story about. And the Jefferson kids just did a remarkable job of it.
Yes.
What do you, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, the value of giving teenagers a chance to see what they're capable of, a chance to see what's possible. You don't know you can't do this because you've never tried. Well, let's try and see how you do.
Well, Randy, I think you speak to the level of what young people are. Young people and young children are natural servant leaders.
Right.
They not, how when children are like, I want to help, I help, I want to be able to do this. And sometimes as adults, we want to protect them, or we want to do it for them all the time. Sure. And we have something within the children's shelter where we say, children are natural servant leaders. And so even though they can't interact with our children who are small children or under the age of 18, that doesn't mean that they're not leaders themselves. And I think that the Jefferson High School kiddos led by Mr. Callahan was a prime example of that. They truly came from a position of inquiry, right? And so that's a very good leadership quality to have to begin with, is always when you lead by inquiry, of always asking the question of why does this happen? What is it? And of course, child abuse and neglect is a topic that it's hard to talk about, and a lot of people turn off by it.
Absolutely.
But I think it's more, it can be very prevalent in urban populations. But how do you help support maybe a young person or a child who's going through some hurts, right? And how do these young people who are natural leaders, they're wanting to share their story. And so you have this type of population who have said, yeah, I want to learn about the children's shelter. What are y'all doing? I want to ask the right questions. I want to learn more, because you're priming the next wave of storytellers. Right. You're creating that next wave of leaders who are going to say, we need to continue to build those nonprofit organizations who have been in our community for so long, that what our organization looked like 100 years ago was very different, even 10, 20 years ago. Right. And when you look at young people, they want just a natural opportunity to serve. And when you give them that opportunity, whether it's through tell them a story through a visual component like what your students did, or sharing with them that they need to do a donation drive of books or toiletries or diapers, something tangible, it gets them out beyond their school, beyond their 4 brick and mortar school, and gets them to interact with people, because those are the soft skills that I think a lot of students may not be able to have or acquire. Right. And we expect them to start doing that in college or technical school. They need to do it today, Right. And when you have a teacher like Mr. Callahan who said, okay, let's go ahead and take out the video equipment. Well, what do you think? He wasn't answering the question for them when they asked. Right.
The best teachers ask questions. Yeah,
exactly. So he was engaging with them, and there was a team of 4, and they were so dynamic, and they have great aspirations. And I think giving young people an opportunity to ask the questions, to come to a point of inquiry, and to be able to give them that opportunity to go beyond their school to learn more. That's exactly what education and what learning is about.
There's a couple of unique experiences in the BexarFest process that we put there deliberately. It was no accident. This is the first time a lot of these kids have interacted in any significant way with a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've been on the tour or something like that, but I mean, we're embedding them in your organization for weeks and mm-hmm. really giving them a chance to not only understand what you do, but why you do it and how you do it.
Sure.
And mm-hmm. it's also the first time a lot of these kids have dealt with an adult on a peer-to-peer basis. It's always been parent, child, student, teacher.
Sure.
And now it's client, vendor.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
The question I get a lot is, what's the hardest part for the kids? Is they're so good with the technology, and absolutely they are. They're better at the technology than I'll ever be.
Sure.
But the biggest growth opportunity I guess they get is to deal with adults as adults. Did you see the Jefferson kids do that? Did they come in a little shy, a little nervous, and then gain some?
Well, I think when they have a list of questions, right? And so as a good interviewer, you're never going to give your question. Well, I mean, so as a public relations professional, you right. always kind of, you can you're either going to get the questions ahead of time, or you're going to just get the questions as you go apart in your interview.
Right.
And they obviously had a set of questions. And, I've been with the Children's Shelter for 10 years, but I've been doing public relations and public affairs for 15. And, kind of answering their questions, even though they didn't have to ask them, they're like, okay, and so how do they ask other leading questions, I think,
right.
because all of those things are just soft skills that they'll gather as they go about. I mean, some of them are wanting to go into the field of journalism. Some of them are wanting to go into the field of graphics. And so to kind of see that spirit of collaboration, and that's what adults do, right? I mean, right. No longer do we ever work in silos. Nonprofit organizations are having to dig deep and say, okay, what am I doing with this organization to gain more maximized potential of our mission? When you see a group of young people working together, sometimes that's really hard for people to do, is to collaborate, and we're going to solve a problem. And, yeah. And there's so many professional trainings of how to do that and how to overcome personalities. But when you're getting young people who are willing to work together as a right. team, to be able to tell the story of a longstanding organization, to come from the lens of children, and understanding that they're telling two parallel stories, because you're talking about a child who has the supports needed for family, and then you have some that just are not. And really kind of putting that lens like, oh, I might be going to somebody at school that may not have a parent, or who is abusive, or, and so it kind of goes back to how to be kind to people, and because we just don't ever know what's going on in their own life, right? Sure. And so I think for young people, it's a great opportunity, because there are so many organizations that are popping up where they're wanting to give opportunities for children and young people and young leaders to go out there and interact with, nonprofit organizations. I think a lot of times we may say, oh, well, we're going to go into corporate, or we're going to go into education. Right. But to be quite honest with you, nonprofit organizations are there. They're that there's corporation, there's government, and then there's nonprofits who really kind of fill the gap for all the very specific needs in our community. Right. And when I was looking at the BexarFest website with all of the organizations who are being weighted to be voted on, you could see the diversity of ones who work with seniors, and ones who work with animals, when we work with families. And so it just kind of there's so many different dynamics to what they're learning.
And this is no knock on the kids. This is not their fault. But when the students go out into the field and engage with their nonprofit, I'm surprised at how many of them are caught by surprise. Really? There are kids that don't have enough to eat? Really? Really? There are dogs living on the street? Really? And,
sure.
And it's kind of remarkable that when kids find out there is this need, they respond. They let me at it. Gimme.
Sure.
Let me do
Absolutely.
something about this.
Absolutely. We had a young lady maybe about a year ago or 2 years ago who came by and who was in a high school and said, well, I want to give back. I know I can't volunteer with the kiddos because I'm under the age of 18, but I do want to give back because my brother was here, and so they said, oh, he was treated so nicely and took good care of him, and we were really happy. And when you see that, you see, because I think sometimes we may, maybe nonprofits may not be tapping into the market of young people. They're very they're social media savvy, so they can raise money, but also understanding that they are coming from a very different perspective than adults, and giving that opportunity to kind of think beyond because we're so rooted in our mission, and we think and to have a fresh perspective is always great to have, especially from young people.
There's, I don't want to call it naivete, but there's a certain newness. that I've been in this business a long time. I've seen the worst of society. These kids haven't, and so they come at it from a different perspective, a different attitude. And it's interesting you bring up that point. I've had teachers tell me that the Bear Fest process goes from October or September to February till the premiere. So it goes on for months at a time. The kids find out who their nonprofit is going to be in September. And maybe they don't actually meet with them until October or November. So they find out, oh, we're going to be partnered with X nonprofit organization. How exciting, how fun. This is going to be great. It's going to be fun. It's going to be something out of the ordinary. We get out of class. We get to create music. It's fun, playtime. Then they meet the nonprofit. And they realize these are real people with real issues, with real needs that I never knew existed. This is not a game. This is not playtime. This is really dead serious. And I've seen the kids and the teachers tell me it's remarkable the way that switch gets flipped. That one minute we're just high school kids playing and going to the beach. And the next minute we're young adults in a leadership position who have serious responsibilities. And by God, we're going to step up.
Right. So, I mean, I think it gives them a flavor and because every nonprofit organization has personalities. We have very different dynamics. It could be, they could be an organization that's more state funded, or the funding mechanisms are very different. It could be a funding source. It could be a funding entity, It could be political, could be non-political. And also, there's varying levels of sophistication within nonprofit organizations. And I think that that's something that, because organizations can be very large and they can have an international presence. And then like the American Red Cross, right? That's an example, huge presence. Or other international organizations like BCFS. Or you can have an organization like the Children's Shelter that represents children and families in just Bexar County in the city of San Antonio.
Right.
And that's a very different flavor, and there's very levels of sophistication and knowledge base with all of these organizations. And even within nonprofit organizations, the degrees that you need to hold. Some of them have licensed clinical social work degrees. Some of them are master social workers, licensed professional counselors. These are very long-standing and very rigorous degree plans that people complete to be able to become therapists, not just a psychology degree, but to go beyond and get a postdoctorate. And just understanding laws and what that means, and compliance and all of these things. And for young people to understand that when we hear nonprofit, we may think, oh, well, it's just, it's a small organization. Well, a lot of small organizations can do very mighty work, and they're rooted in their community, and they make true transformation. And sometimes the transformation can't be seen until generations from now. And so sometimes we just have to kind of keep that in the back of our minds. But there are a lot of organizations who are just doing substantial work, and they're just small, medium to large. And we all should come to the table and understand that we recognize very different levels of expertise and the populations we serve, but we're doing great work.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No question. Yeah. And it's, again, I come back to my passion for kids and giving them this opportunity to experience nonprofit community service, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Sure.
What we found in setting up BearFest was that kids aren't really aware of how nonprofits operate, large or small.
Sure.
They think everybody that works at a nonprofit is a volunteer. That nobody's getting paid. These are all just good-natured, good-hearted people. And we wanted to engage them deeply in a nonprofit for just that reason. No, you can absolutely make a career out of community service. And we want kids to understand that. And it's remarkable how the nonprofits in San Antonio have embraced that, yours included. That when we pitch the festival to nonprofit organizations, I tell them, there's no charge. You don't have to pay to be in this. The kids aren't paying to be in this. Everybody's doing this strictly out of the goodness of their heart, volunteering. But I ask the nonprofits to make the commitment that you're going to have to give up some time. You're going to have kids underfoot. They're going to be asking a lot of questions. You're going to have to go to meetings. You're going to have to do reviews. And the nonprofits have stepped up. The kids have stepped up. Let me at that nonprofit. But the nonprofits have stepped up. I will do this for the kids, for the education it gives them, for the opportunity it gives them, for the experience it gives them. And I just want to say thanks. I appreciate that the nonprofits in San Antonio and Bexar County and the surrounding counties are, and I say this to teachers too, you got plenty to do. You're not looking for things to do, but to be willing to step up and give these kids this opportunity and take on the extra workload that entails is I'm very grateful. Thank you.
I think a lot of times, and thank you so much, I think it would be naive for nonprofit organizations just to say, oh, well, you're welcome, but it's not, it's definitely gets us in it creates an additional level of brand awareness with different populations that we may not even interface with. Right. And so, yes, it's an opportunity for young people to learn, but it's also to recognize that now, it's high quality. We're not talking about something that the quality of the nature of the video isn't high quality, right. But they're taking time to learn through these various levels of engagement with nonprofit organizations. And I think for all of us, it really does make a significant impact to know that we're communicating our mission with other populations. Again, Jefferson High School literally is down the street from the children's shelter. But sometimes like, oh, I passed by it. And sometimes, oh, I didn't know it was 10 acres. I'm like, yes, we sit on 10 beautiful acres. And then you can't see it from Woodlawn. But getting them to think beyond what they know is comfortable, right? Because I think learning goes beyond the four walls of school. They learn by engaging, they learn by inquiry, they learn by asking questions, and they learn by trial and error. They will make mistakes, but if they're coming from a perspective, because again, the ones I interacted with seem very much like natural servant leaders. And those are kinds of things that, servant leadership is taught with professionals. And so when you have young people who exhibit those natural traits, I think is a great opportunity to know they're the next generation of workforce.
Yeah, I always come back to that.
Yeah.
I feel like San Antonio's creative community and community service is in pretty good hands.
Yeah, the future's very capable hands.
Yeah, and it's remarkable to me that you give these kids an opportunity. That's all they want. Just give me a chance. And they will surprise you with what they're capable of. It's just unbelievable. Well, thank you so much. I'll let you have a drink of water. Thank you so much for joining me, for giving me your time and your expertise. I really appreciate it. Thanks for what you did for the kids. And we'll see you again.
All right, Rainey. Thank you so much. Let me know if y'all need anything. Again, thank you so much for you and your team and the kiddos at Jefferson High School. What a great dynamic team. And we're very thankful, and congratulations to them. They really are really awarded, and they're great. And we were just so honored to have been selected.
Well, thank you. Take care.
All right. Take care.